Welcome to this episode of Conquering Leadership. Today, our guest is Aaron Clippinger, and he is in charge of vSign software. Aaron has been part of this company for a few years now, but going back a little way, a bit of potted history. During the 2007-2008 depression, which took a bunch of companies down throughout the US, Aaron left the Big Five audit firm and moved back into the family business in order to not have it go the way of other enterprises during that time. Family's sign company lost 50% of its sales force to a competitor, landed in debt to the tune of around $500,000, and had the unlucky and unpleasant surprise of discovering the CFO was embezzling funds. So Aaron took over, turned the organization around from near bankruptcy today. It's a very profitable company with a per employee revenue stream at 25% higher than their competitors. So it's a phenomenal achievement. Then pivoting the business, coming close to COVID, which is a top table subject in the COVID, is how do we pivot? Aaron created vSign software, which is a blueprint for his and other companies with regard to sign installation management. And it's one of the top rated software platforms in their industry today. So Aaron, welcome to the show. And how was that for an intro?
Oh, it feels pretty good. I feel like I've already hit my pinnacle. It's just a downward slide from here on out.
Hey, you've hit the sky and you're still flying, man. So tell us a little bit more. So we generally go out to, whilst I'm located here in the US, our audience is international. We've got people from UK, Hong Kong, Singapore, US, Europe, all listening to this show. So just tell us a little bit more about the sign installation or the signage business and then the software, please.
Well, it's kind of a weird industry, to say the least. We all see signs day in and day out, and you walk by and you look at the sign and you go, oh, that's the store I want to walk into, and you walk into the store. But you never think about the sign or what it takes to be built, what it takes to be created, the logistics with city municipalities and whether it's legal to have a sign there. So it's an underrated industry that nobody thinks about. But once you're in the industry, it's kind of you're hooked in. Once you see it once, it's kind of hard to get out of the industry. It's always funny to see what creative minds thought up of what imagery for each type of sign that basically is the first handshake to the client. So if you own, let's just say, a retail store and you put a very creative sign out there, that's pretty much your first handshake to that client saying, hello, this is who I am, come on in. So it's a unique industry, but it's a lot of fun because you're not doing the same thing day in and day out. It's not repetitive at all. So that industry has been fun to do. Also, let's not lie, working with big metal tools, big cranes, erecting stuff up on the side of buildings. That's always a joy in itself, and it's not mundane. You're not a gopher inside of a little cubicle sitting there just going, oh, it's 5 o'clock coming, can I get out of here? So it's a fun industry.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you just touched on something there. It's non-repetitive, so it's creative, and I'm sure no doubt that there's plenty of big boys' toys to play with out there on the circuit. But what kind of challenges does that bring in a totally creative and non-repetitive industry?
The challenges is you can't set up a machine or set up a personnel to do one job day in, day out. They're going to have to be creative in themselves. They might be a metal worker, but they might be bending coils one day, rectangles another day, flat bar with push through. There's always going to be something different for them. So they have to be versatile in a bunch of different avenues of manufacturing, which I'm sure adds to the fun for them as well, because they're not doing the same thing day in and day out.
But it's sort of the antithesis of big corporate America, if you like. And Elon Musk just recently spoke to the MBAization of American business in the sense that it's moved away from the tenets and facets that you're talking about right now. So you've taken your industry, you've turned it around, and you're pioneering. So what does that look like, sort of pioneering and pivoting in a super creative business?
So the sign industry is kind of an old industry. Believe it or not, we're almost 15 to 20 years behind technology. There are a lot of sign companies across the United States are still using Excel spreadsheets to do estimates to manage their companies, or that's something that the modern day businesses, that was 2002, 2003, when people were escaping that and going to specialized platforms, software platforms. So in 2010, 2012, I got the idea to build a software platform that could handle the different ways of looking at it. Every business is different. Ford Motor Company looks at something completely different than Chevrolet, which looks at it completely differently than Tesla. But if you were to build a software platform that all three of them could combine their own culture and still run their companies, that was what I was aiming for when I built vSign Software, which was a software platform that the companies would not lose their culture of their company, but be able to infuse the culture of their company into the software and still have it run cleanly, adequately, and then give them all the reporting they need to be a good leader.
That's quite a challenge. You know, the irony or appropriateness of having a tech startup in here in California. Just before we dig into the subject of leadership, and I obviously don't want you to speak to any IP secrets that you don't want to give away, but how do you get from an idea through to an active software? What's that take?
Well, I'm very, very fortunate. It's probably the reasons why I've been excelling so well is I had the family business of the sign company. So we actually had a live, breathing, working model, beta test company, if you will, a very large beta test company. We have 30 employees. We do $6 million a year. The average sign company is 4 employees. They barely break $1 million if they do at all. So for us to be able to be a good size sign company and then have a software that's attached to it, we can literally build a piece of software, give it to the beta test company, and they can run it for a month and then get their feedback. Sometimes they go, oh my God, this makes my life so much easier. Other times they look at you and go, please remove the software now. They hate it. They can't stand it. But you learn from that. It's trial and error to a point. Something that looks really good on paper sometimes does not equate out to the real world at all. Yeah. And sometimes something on paper that looks absolutely horrendous, you look at go, nobody's going to use this. It's a bad idea. And somebody keeps begging you for it. So you say, fine, I'll build it anyway and let's see what happens. And it ends up being a wonderment. So that trial and error is so true in this industry.
So you are, as a leader, you've got in your army of entrepreneurs, if you like, you've got, I'm assuming, artists, process managers, project managers, installers, engineers, technicians, accountants. You've got the whole panoply of personality types and professions all under your umbrella.
Yes, I definitely do. There's no doubt. I have the introverts that love to create the pretty pictures and the designs and whatnot. I have the extroverts that want to go out and do sales and talk to everybody. Sometimes over talk to people from time to time, and you kind of get them back and come on, let's get back to work here, over here. But the melting pot of all the different personalities is what makes up the industries. A lot of people call us the motley crew simply because we're a band of misfits. And we don't really fit in anywhere, but yet when we all get together and work on it, it works very, very well. We have a good crew. I will say that the sign industry, and even I've found out in the software industry, is a little less PC and a little bit more, let's get it done. Let's move forward and make this happen. So it's always fun to watch that happen. But with the different personality types, you get your rubs. It's not all smooth sailing at all times. And so when you get your rubs, you can't do a broad brush stroke. You really have to look at each personality and say, okay, what makes you tick? What makes you get excited? What is this person makes them get excited? And then approach that subject in that avenue or that aspect. I have one person that really likes things simple. And if you overcomplicate it, he's gonna burn out. He's gonna get frustrated, he's gonna get upset. Then I have another person that wants to know all the gritty details, make it as complex as possible. And then that person's happy because they see the bigger picture and they see where they fit into. So it's definitely not a one size fits all when it comes to making them work well. You know, Jack Ma said something very, very good. He said, dumb people, it's easy to make them work together. Smart people, it's very difficult to make them work together because they all think they're the smartest person in the room. And you have to bounce from one foot to the other to make sure that you get them all working together, regardless of where they believe they are on the intellectual scale. But to get them to work together and drive together for the common goal, that's a trick in itself. I'm not going to lie.
You've opened up a bunch of, there's one of the things I love about doing this show is the guests I've had on open up a whole bunch of pathways to a whole different range of questions, which is superb. I'm going to put some of those thoughts in a parking lot for the moment and just come back round to leadership. So for you yourself, in charge of this motley crew, what defines leadership?
What defines leadership is the fact of being at the head of the whole situation or the whole system. If you're not willing to do that job yourself, you shouldn't be asking somebody else to do it. Leadership is being able to lead from the front. There's a question I hear from time to time is what's the difference between leadership and management? And I've seen that quite a bit over the years. And I'll tell you right now, leadership is leading from the front, and management is leading from the back. Management is go do this and bring me back an answer. Leadership is being hand in hand with them, saying, I'm going to do this with you. We're going to get this done. Let me teach you how to do it so you can fend for yourself and do it for yourself the next time around. I really think the best leaders are the ones who are in the trenches with the workers at the same time. If you manage from on high, you're doing that. You're just managing. You're not really a leader.
And what type of outputs does that create in a personal sense? How do you see that in how it generates itself throughout your teams?
Well, one of the big things that you're going to do is if you're a leader, you're down in the trenches meeting with the other people, you're going to be able to see what personality quirks and kinks each person has. I have one person that thought that sales was the most horrible thing, did not want to be an extrovert, did not want to go outside and talk. After putting that person in that position for a half a year, they came back to they absolutely love it. They think it's the greatest thing ever. So I do find to a point that some people don't know what the other side is in the way of, sales versus project management, and they're scared of the unknown. So they say, no, I don't want to do it. But if you meet him and you talk to him, you just go, God, your personality is perfect for this. Let's move you into that. And so as you meet people and you talk to them, you're going to find out that they're actually better suited in other parts of the business or another business in general, even if it's not yours. I've always had the philosophy of help people get to their maximum potential for them. And if I can't give that to them in my company, I'm going to tell them so. You're going to hit a ceiling. You're going to have to go somewhere else, and you're going to do very, very well. But if you get the person to realize their best potential, the company's going to take care of itself.
That's quite an interesting theme that's occurred over a bunch of these interviews I've done in this series is effective leadership is about helping and transforming the people who work with us. For our organizations to be good, then we need them to good, but we need to help them. And which is quite an empathetic approach to leadership. No idea how you define yourself as a character, but where did you get your empathy from? Is that a nature or nurture?
I think it's a little bit of both, because I think that naturally I had an empathy to it. It was just something that came up even as a kid. You can always tell the kids that have really good empathy. They're 3 years old, they're on the playground, one falls, and the kids that have empathy run to the other kid and pick them back up, make sure they're okay. And then you see the kids that just don't have empathy naturally, and they just kind of sit there and stare. There's nothing wrong. It's not like they're mean kids, but you can just tell the ones that have innately have it. And then as you get older, you realize that you want, for the people that are competitors, I mean, let's not lie. Everyone that's a true leader is a competitor. We're very competitive in nature. But there's good competitive and there's bad competitive. Bad competitive is you win at all costs. You don't care who you hurt. At the end of the day, you go, I win. They got this little trophy. And more than likely, they're alone on that podium with nobody else around them. If you're going to be a really good competitor, you're going to actually enjoy losing. You're going to enjoy losing. You're going to enjoy learning from other people. And you're going to have that empathy. I've always found out that the people make the company. Take care of your employees. Take care of them. The rest of the thing kind of falls into place. Everyone wants to do their best. Kind of switching gears in this conversation, if you have an employee that's unhappy, they will undermine the whole entire company and the culture and the goal of what you want, because they're unhappy and so they're showing it. If you have a whole bunch of employees that are very happy, know the goal, excited to be a part of it to get to that goal, your company is just going to do circles around all your competitors.
That's quite interesting, actually. I've just been helping an organization recently and I've been speaking to them on non-verbal versus verbal communications. And, we sat with the CEO just this week and I said, right, let's have a look at your team, because I'm picking up now who's unhappy in the room here. And your organization's pretty small and you can't afford to have this many unhappy people. And we just did an absolute recalibration on right roles for the right people in the room. And that's lovely to hear you speak to that, because it is so true. And you've got people out there, Richard Branson, Musk, Bill Gates, all these people who talk all the time to the fact it's your people that make your business. You've got to look after your people. I want to something that really fascinates me about getting a win, and you just spoke to there about sort of in the broadest sense about winning. You've got to lose to win, right?
Yeah.
Let's build on that a little bit. What does that mean for you?
So the software. So I started off with a software company. I had an idea, had a goal of what it is. And I researched my industry and didn't find anything out there. I really, really didn't. And I said, okay, well, we need to build something. We need to fill this void. And the first year of getting V off the ground, all we did was program. Didn't have one customer the first year. We just programmed and built this system. Year 2, we had, I think, 7 or 8 companies come on board and sign up. And instantly they said, well, this doesn't do this. Well, it doesn't do that. That's part of our main goal here is like invoicing. It had invoicing, but let's use invoicing example. They would come in and say, well, it doesn't do invoicing. I'm like, that's the end goal. We build a sign so we can invoice so we can make money. The system doesn't do invoicing. How is this system going to be worth anything? So as soon as it went out to market, I really much had my teeth kicked in. Everyone just picked it apart, tell me how it was wrong, how it was bad, how it was horrible, and then walked away. That first trade show was a very, very humbling experience on what I didn't do. Not one person gave me a pat on the back, said, hey, you did a lot of good things here. There's a lot of good stuff here that you can build on. Everyone just picked it apart, said it's crap, and moved on. And then I realized that being the artist is very difficult. Being the critic is really simple. So in the way of that one, yeah, I lost big on that one. You know, you thought you'd show up, you're the next best thing since sliced bread and everyone's going to buy. And instead you just got a whole bunch of feedback, sometimes not so much positive feedback, and you leave with no customers. So you definitely have to lose before you can win. And that really is another thing about that leadership that you talk about is you have to be able to admit you failed. You have to be able to eat the humble pie and say, okay, I didn't do such a good job here, but I recognize the feedback, and then grow from it. If you walk away from that trade show saying no one knows what we're talking about, it's a good product, and you don't receive that feedback, that's not communication. That's the opposite of communication. I've basically shut down and I'm not going to grow at all. So you got to fail. Yeah, you really have to fail in order to grow on that one. But what you do with that knowledge is really what defines that leader.
I have complete empathy with that. In some of the industries I've been in, you see something that's so obvious and you roll it out and then you just get a smack in the face and you hit the mat and you're lying on the mat going, how can they not see it? It's a real bruise to your ego for sure. But you've clearly, you're back up off the mat and you're charging forward, which is great. So who's inspired you or given you the inspiration to be this way?
You know what? My inspiration comes from a bunch of little things. I didn't have like one person. You know, I'd love to say, oh, Elon Musk, he gets up, he decides he wants to go to Mars. He goes to Mars. He wants to build an electric car and save the planet from ozone emissions. So he goes into, I would love to say it's him, but it's not. My inspiration comes from empathy of others and being able to help others. Watching my 5-year-old daughter pick up her 10-month-old brother, and he falls down. She runs over and picks him up, and then they're good and they keep going. Watching that empathy and saying that there's good in humanity really is where the inspiration comes from. It's saying, okay, we can be better. We can do more. We can make our lives easier. I'm going to admit, I'm not going to lie, I'm a very, very lazy person. And the only way that I'm going to be able to be a lazy person is to have everything built just right. So it works so smooth that I don't have to think a lot and I can just push the little button from left to right and be done. And so I'm going to work very, very hard so I can be lazy for the rest of my life up front. But the other inspiration will come from just what you see. You see somebody do a new trick on you ever watch surfing or you watch motocross and they do some new trick, or they figure out some way to do it that no one's ever done before to make the motorcycle hit the jump faster or fly off a lip of a wave faster. And you look at that and go, okay, you were able to push those boundaries that everyone thought there was a boundary there. What can I do to push the boundaries of the industries that I'm in? How can I change it or make it better before that? I know that the software company was going to exist, and I thought about it the day that I sat in line for the first iPhone. You know, I sat in line for the first iPhone in front of that Apple store for 2 hours and got it and looked at it and went, I am holding a computer in my hand. It might take a phone call, but that is a living, breathing machine, a computer that I can get anywhere in touch with anybody, anyhow, any medium. And I'm still using Excel at work. Okay, something is very, very wrong here. So the inspiration comes from basically people pushing the boundaries of what we thought was the top, the upper echelon of what it was, and it wasn't even close. And so that's where I get a lot of my inspiration from that.
That's really cool. And I'd like to pick out of that, just speak to you. You've mentioned surfing, you've mentioned motocross, and giving yourself opportunities to be lazy, which is, if you look back at the 80s and Gordon Gekko type eras, that would have been the antithesis of executive management. And today that's particularly in a world of mental well-being issues, you're carving out time in your week to look after yourself effectively, which is really very important to be a top performer. So I think that's so important. I really, really do, and I can't emphasize enough. So I'd like to explore that outside of time with family and looking after the kiddos, which is obviously a top table subject for any family member. But having time for yourself to do your surfing, to do your motocross, to talked about it gives you creative space for thinking and inspiration. But what else does that give you? Why is that important?
Yeah, I really didn't understand it, to be honest with you, until about 4 or 5 years ago. I was very much a workaholic. I had no problem working 60 hours a week, come home, and the household suffered. The kids didn't see me as much. When we did get together, I still was staring at my phone, staring at all the emails coming in, and I was giving the family half of the information that they deserved, half of their time, and I stole it from them to give it more to the workload. And so around 4 or 5 years ago, I read something where Bill Gates actually takes a week off from everybody, goes to a house by himself, and he just thinks for a whole week without any interruption, no phone, no cell phone, no internet or anything of that nature. And I went, wow, that's kind of extreme. Why would you unplug for a whole year from everything? I don't understand. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The more I was like, oh, wow, this is actually something that's worthwhile and important to do. Now, I don't disappear for a week. I still think that's very extreme, but I will unplug. I will go outside or just walk around and do something else. I actually have grown to love shopping. I actually don't care to go find the clothes and whatnot. I just want to go out and see the other people. What are they wearing? How are they interact? What is the new greatest thing? So it makes it look like they're wealthy, that they're wearing, to make that personification that I'm wealthy. And I just kind of watch it and see the ins and outs of that. And I kind of go, okay, now I'm kind of getting back to ground level. I'm starting to understand what's going on, and I'll be able to apply that. One of the things I did find out when I was a workaholic was I became unplugged of society, and I became unplugged from where society is going and what society needs. And so you got to have that balance in order to know what's right to drive your company and what's going to go on, because your employees, they're not like you. They're not going to put in 60-hour work weeks and be happy. They're going to go out and have a life. They're look more focused on their personal life than they are their work life. And so they're going to move forward in society or change their views as society changes. You're going to be the one left behind. So you got to have that balance to be able to just see where to drive. And then, of course, on the other side, to have that balance just for your own mental capacity. One of the things that I actually did was I built a very high-end shower. It's a steam room shower. It has a bench on it. It has 3 different shower heads. And it's not just a shower to get myself clean. I actually do a lot of my thinking in there. I sit on the bench, I relax, and it's a time to kind of focus, say, okay, I'm out of work mode, let's go into play mode. And you kind of have those areas where you flip a switch. Yeah. I had one person tell me that they have actually pick an intersection on the drive home. And as soon as they hit that intersection, they're no longer allowed to think about work. They now have to think about their house. And they actually had a physical cue to tell them to switch gears. That never worked for me. I will be honest. I tried it. It didn't work. But the thinking is sound along those lines of being able to make the balance. So when you're at work, you're given 100% versus just 60% because you ground yourself down so much.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there for me. I've coached a few people in executive roles that, looking after yourself is not selfish. It actually benefits the business. And the mental thing, I hear you. The mental race that's going on in my brain everywhere. I've always loved doing operational roles, really enjoyed them. And because there's just always keeps the brain ticking over. But I got to that space where I couldn't switch it off. And as a natural introvert, I completely empathize with the point of, and now I'm in a rabbit hole and I'm so far away from the community because they're sitting on Earth and I'm up on Mars. I actually have to be self-aware of that and then work hard to come back to ground level. So I'd like to flip that round a little bit before we broach another subject. So we've just had a look at what we gained. So what do our businesses lose if we don't do that?
It loses perspective. It really loses what the end goal is. So one of the things, like, words fail me. What is like the motto? There's a specific term for it. When you first create a company, you got to have your motto or your help me out here.
Your philosophy.
But a mission statement.
Mission statement, yeah.
That mission statement is so critical, and it's kind of an old business practice that a lot of people don't do these days, which is really sad. You got to have a mission statement of why did we create this company? Why are we here? Why are we doing this? Because you're going to lose focus. Yeah. And as you don't take care of yourself, you're going to lose focus on that mission statement. And at some point in time, what usually happens, what I've seen in my past from my personal experience, is it just becomes all about the almighty dollar. And once you change that almighty dollar and you forget your mission statement, you're going to end up losing. You're going to lose the end, because it's easy to see through. It's easy to see through a company and go, you're out for the money. You're not out for the well-being of your customers. And then you're going to lose market share and you're going to go out of business. So when you take time to take care of yourself, working out is huge. Your body is used to being out in the sun and running and hunting and gathering back in the days. Now we're in an office and we have these weird lamps over our heads and we don't see the sun anymore. It's not good for the body. And I don't think it's good for the soul either. And to be able to get outside, work outside, get the blood moving is paramount to mental health. So when you do show up for work, you are 100% and you are able to focus on that mission statement.
Absolutely. Heart, body, mind, soul all need to be looked after in these roles. We're coming back to your intro. You highlighted a number of challenges. So we're going into end of 2020. Everyone's had a punch in the face from bloody COVID. But you must be looking back to, you've got here the depression of 2007, 2008, and then the corollary of that is all the things you had to solve with the family sign company, the embezzlement issue with the CFO, creating the software, and now we're in a COVID world. So there's a bunch of challenges there beyond just pure operations. Can we dig into one or some of those, and how have you faced them, and how did you manage through them?
So you have a couple different things that happened. There was all kinds of fun things that I wish never on a business owner, but they do happen. It was a family sign business. So my father was in charge. He was running it. And so as soon as I showed up, you had a nepotism problem. Everyone was like, oh, it's father's son. He's got a silver spoon in his mouth. He doesn't do anything. And so I instantly found out that I had to work 130 to 140% more than anybody else just to get the average respect of everybody else that was in the company. So I had to overtake that hurdle. So when I first was named VP, I didn't even flex the VP muscle for the first year. Wouldn't even take the title. I wouldn't just let it settle down, let the waters cool down a little bit here, and try and figure out what was going to happen there. As I did that, and it was like, oh, you're VP, you're going to tell us what to do. I said, no, I just need to know, what do you need to be successful? What do you need? And it was a role reversal. I made them kind of in charge by saying, what do you need to be successful? And I didn't say, I'm the VP, this is what you do. It wasn't that thought process. And throughout doing that and becoming very humble and just saying, what do you need to be successful? I was able to see a lot more of the errors in the company that needed to be rectified. So taking a back seat and kind of looking at the company from a different perspective really helped me into saying, okay, this is where we're failing. This is where we're successful. I'm not just going to cut off the failures and run through the successes. I'm going to make sure that we're a success at all platforms. So when I did start to take on the role of VP and guide and learn, or lead, I should say, guide and lead, they were already receptive to it because I was already helping them be successful. So I didn't have that much of a hurdle after I took the first year of Humble Pie. Then you had the employees that kind of hunkered down. They protected themselves. They didn't let you see anything. They're like, no, if you know what I'm doing, you'll take my job. And they really had a fear to them. The only one that ended up having a real fear that was valid because they were doing something illegal was my CFO. She was embezzling, and she was taking money and she was writing herself checks, but no one could look at the accounting, and she hid it very well that you literally had to send the day that I smelled something funny. I said, why don't you take the day off? You worked very hard. She said, oh, I thank you very much. She thought she was getting a half day off, so she left. And I dove into her computer and sat there for, I think, almost 9 hours going through all the books and found the oddities, the missed mistakes, found where she was moving the money to. And luckily for me, it was only about, I think it was between $6,000 and $8,000. In our world, that's chump change. I mean, $8,000 is a lot of money. Let's not lie. I'd stop and pick it up if I saw it on the ground. But in the world of companies, $8,000 is not that much. So I got very lucky. I caught it early. I was able to get rid of her. But what hurts is in most companies, the person that handles your money is a very small percentage of your company. So I have 30 employees. I only have one person, a CFO, watching the money. It's the biggest part of the company. It's what makes the company spin, which makes the company work, but it's only one person. So when you lose a CFO, now you're trying to figure out how are you going to pay your vendors? How are you going to write purchase orders? How are you going to reconcile the purchase orders? How are you going to know if there's profit at the end of the month? Is the company really doing good, or is it bleeding? How are we going to get the paychecks to go there? So all these new onslaught and problems happen. And I know for a fact there's some owners out there that go, okay, my CFO's embezzling, but it's not that much. But the headache that's going to come with letting him or her go is so big that I'm just going to let this play out for a little bit longer. Maybe they'll all of a sudden gain a conscience and stop doing it, but I don't want the headaches. And I will fast forward for anybody that's thinking that the headaches aren't going to go away. They're going to get a lot worse. And the faster you nip it in the bud, the better off your company's going to be. And so I did it right away. We actually had the police come and take her off. And we didn't press charges, but we had the cops arrest her and take her to holding for a couple hours just to really kind of ram the point home that what you're doing is illegal. We didn't press charges, and I will say that's a mistake on my part. In the future, anybody that does embezzle, I will press charges, because that person, since I didn't press charges, is probably out there in some other financial role doing the same thing again to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel as a humanitarian role or a duty in life is to really punish those people and put that black mark on the record so they can't do it to somebody else again.
Yeah.
So you're going to have that, and you just got to put your head down and start grinding. I mean, that's really the answer to what happened with that CFO. We got rid of her. We went in and I literally just started bookkeeping. And I had been very rusty. I do have an accounting background, but I knew, money goes in here, it goes into these filters, and then you paychecks here. It's common sense to a point. Our books are very dirty. There's a lot of journal entries, but we got by. The company got by, and it was able to expand. And then we kept interviewing for people that we really thought was a job. We didn't hire somebody just because it could fill the seat. We really took our time, and 4 months later, we found a good CFO, good accountant, and she has been a rock star for us. She's still with the company, and she helped clean up the books and get it all dialed in. So it's one of those things that you see the problem, you recognize the problem, do not pause, attack it, get rid of the bad infectious blood, and then start the healing process and start to rebuild the company. And sometimes you might even find out that when you go to rebuild the company, you may not need that position anymore. 2 other departments might fill in that position. You really don't need it anymore. So a reorganization is not a bad thing at all times. Sometimes it's going to bring to light that you are spending money needlessly.
I'm going to applaud you there for the courage to that, and you sort of walking the walk on your own initial statements around leadership. Is you see a decision that has to be made, you make it. Unexpected byproduct is the problems that flush out. So you get in the trenches and do the work and clean it up. You haven't handed it off at that point. So you're reconfiguring your own culture through your own methodology, as it were. Thank you so much. This is one of my hobby projects is fraud investigations, corporate cultures, because I find it absolutely fascinating how organizations do turn a blind eye. And even if they've got yellow flags waving, and their yellow flags are waving and, they're going off, and everyone's ignoring them, even though everyone knows that there's an issue somewhere, we can pick it up. And just off the back of that, I was just reading mid-year 2020 about the expectation of embezzlement in companies subsequent to the federal stimulus handouts, they reckon it's going to be like a 300% increase in fraud investigations over the next 2 years across the country. I worked on similar projects overseas. Is we find parasite organizations within the organization, and it was oftentimes kicked off by someone in a position of trust and power.
Yeah, it is. It's funny, when I did the accounting, when I was in college in accounting, they taught us about 10 or 15 different ways that people can embezzle. One, of course, was setting up a shell corporation, and then the shell corporation would send invoices, and the company would pay them, and it's just going to nothing. Another way was doing refunds. They would make an invoice, and they go, "Oh, it's not really an invoice to refund it," but they'd refund it back to their own credit card and not the company credit card. So that was a fraud one. In my particular case, I have no problem sharing this. What she was doing was she was paying herself out for vacation not used, but she had already taken all of her vacation. And so she actually got away with it for 2 years before I caught it on the third year. And so she would say at the end of the year, when we're cashing everything out, she goes, "Oh, I didn't take a vacation this year," and write a check to herself. Well, my father and myself knew who had taken vacation and who hadn't. So she would write a check to herself, and then she would stuff it into the envelope with all the company checks and make our receptionist go to the bank to deposit them. This was before direct deposit and all that fun stuff. So then she had some unknown person deposit the check, so she couldn't be held liable for it or have not her face shown up there.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, the bank sent back just to us and not the mail, because normally they send a copy of all the checks in the mail. Well, she was the one getting the mail, so she could rip up that page and not show it. And just so happened I was in there, and the bank guy looked at me and said, "Hey, I have all of this. Let me show you all these different checks." So I'm like, "Yeah, give it to me." And I was, to be honest with you, I was kind of annoyed. I'm like, this is a no reason gig, but fine, I'll humor you. I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I flipped the checks and saw that one, and I knew it was erroneous immediately. And she had even forged a signature on it as well.
Yeah.
And so I was able to see it, catch it, go in, see what else had been done. And then I started looking for all the companies, started qualifying all the other companies, found out she had not set up another company. She literally was just double dipping on her vacation.
Yeah.
And it was enough to get rid of her.
But to your point, those are all deliberate actions. They're not casual actions.
Yeah.
Those are deliberate actions with a process. And I think, and again, thanks for sharing, because I think a lot of executives, when they uncover something like that, the first thing they do is breathe a sigh of relief. And then they have to get someone externally help to cut out all the dead wood and all the, clean up all the virus, if you like. And then at that point, they have this sense of relief that they've done it, and no one, they can then hide their shame. No one sees their shame, and then they stop at that. And you have to go through this process to just cleanse out your whole organization. So well done you. That's huge courage, and massive kudos to you for doing it. That's
appreciate that. Yeah, it wasn't fun at the time. I speak with great confidence now after the math, but when you're neck deep in the weeds, it wasn't fun. It really wasn't. And every single time an invoice showed up, you became very skeptical. Yeah. And I will say another thing about being a leader is try and silence the skepticism that you have in your brain, because it's going to creep up. You're basically looking for problems and you're fixing them so your company runs efficiently. You are not a proactive person that's just dreaming up new stuff. Yeah. You get to do that to a point, and that's what everyone thinks a leader is and an owner does. You're just sitting there thinking up new things, but really what you're doing is cleaning up all the problems behind. And it was that first couple of months when an invoice would show up, I'm like, it's an illegal company, don't pay it. Oh, it's an illegal company, don't pay it. And it's hard to not be skeptic of other people or other situations.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, and that's it. It's fraudulent behaviors and fraudulent actions. They're predatory, like other crimes we could speak to. Yeah. Just because they're white collar as opposed to blue collar, they're still predatory, and they still fall in a silo that then has a ripple effect, as you say, with trust, confidence, and all those things. And it sort of creates its own version of Stockholm syndrome. So let's flip out of that, because it is a tough subject to broach. And as I said, thank you once again for doing it. So what's your biggest highlight when you look back over the last 10 years with all these transitions and transformations? You look back at this one thing and go, man, that just felt so good.
You know, I will say the biggest thing, the biggest highlight, hands down, was actually having a very profitable company to where it was the profit levels that I thought it should have been. And so in 2000, so the sign industry got hit a year before everybody else. Everyone remembers a big recession, the depression of 2008, 2009. But for the sign industry, we got hit in 2007. Nobody was opening any more stores. Nobody was changing their logo. Nobody was closing down stores. They're just kind of riding the wave out. So the sign industry just dried up in '07. There was no work to be had. And so we got hit really hard. And then we had not been doing a good job as a company through '04, '05, and '06. We were taking a lot of loss leader jobs without any more work in the future. It was just losing money left and right. So when 2007 hit, we literally had $500,000 in debt. We only did $3 million a year. So if you were to take a 10% of $3 million a year, that's only $300,000 clean money. And then, and that's if you're doing good at 10%. But we were doing 1%. So we only had $3,000 to show for all our hard work. And we had $500,000 in debt. And most company owners look at that and go, that was a failure. Let's close our doors. Yeah. So fast forward all the hell that we went through and slowly paying off all of our vendors, making deals with them and having them say, hey, we'll do COD if you continue to give us product, and we'll slowly make payments of $1,000, $2,000 until we get you paid. But we're going to get you paid 100%. Cool. And in 2013, we paid off our last vendor. We were now debt-free in the way of the $500,000 that we owed. And in 2014, 2015, we actually, for the first time, showed a profit that was actually still there. So if you look at it, so in 2014, we had a profit of $10,000, and we actually had $10,000 in the bank. It was actually a real profit, not we showed on paper we made 80,000, but then we gave 90,000 out, and we're literally 10 grand in the hole still. We actually show a real profit. So I remember in 2015, Dad and I writing ourselves a check for $5,000 each for a bonus. At the time, we're now a $4 million company. We wrote ourselves a check for $5,000 for hard work done. And he was excited about it. And I looked at him, I said, this is chump change. This is still not a good organization. Right. And in 2016, we were able to write ourselves a check for almost 30 times that amount. And we actually said, this is a company. This is what we work hard for. This is where we're at. We're able to give our employees that had gotten no Christmas bonuses for 8 years. We gave them a week's salary for Christmas. We're able to put a Christmas party on. We're able to buy new equipment, so nobody's not working on the old equipment. We were actually able to thrive like a living, breathing business. So 2016 was a huge finish line for me. That was probably my greatest achievement of being able to see this thing through, which was an 8-year process to get there. And
you look at that. That's I in the sports world, and I look at the emotional roller coaster of whatever your sport is, what that creates in people. When you get under the hood of sports businesses, they seem to lose sight of process wins lead to the big win. And you're just an articulation of that right there. So, 8 years, that's like 2 World Cup cycles in my brain.
A long time.
And you're looking good on it. You're still looking like a young entrepreneur. And so in the country and the state of young entrepreneurs and entrepreneurialism, you're surrounded by them here in California. For those people, whether they're a silver gray entrepreneur like me or a younger, fresher one like yourself, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for anyone in the world of entrepreneurialism?
Be very, very truthful with yourself and what you love to do. That would be the first thing to do. You really got to find a passion in what you love to do. If somebody were to ask me, what did you want to do for the rest of your life? My first answer, without a doubt, is be a consultant. I would love to help businesses get out of all the pitfalls that I stepped in way faster than 8 years. Try and get them, done in 2 years, and so they can recognize the profits of what it took me 8 years to do. That finish line goal was so rewarding for me that I want other people to experience it and share it. Yeah. And it's kind of funny. I built a software system that kind of makes me a consultant for them. They run my software and shows all their pitfalls, shows them what they do wrong, shows them how to fix it. And so in such a way, I ended up doing what I loved. And I think that everybody at some point in time is going to end up doing what they love, whether they realize it or not. I had a production manager here at the shop, and we asked him, if you could do anything in the world, what would you want to do? And he said, tinker. And he said, tinker. And I said, okay, well, what do you want to tinker with? He goes, everything and anything. I'll be damned if he did not take every project, tinker it in some little tiny maze and make it way more complex than it had to be. And because he wanted to be a tinkerer. And so I always tell people, you're going to end up doing what you love anyway, because that's what you enjoy. That's what you like. So find out what you truly enjoy and go do that.
Yeah.
If you want to open up a restaurant, go be a waiter or waitress. Go live in that world for a little bit, learn from it, and then go do it yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there is a little bit of dumb that needs to come from everything. If you actually knew all the pitfalls before you started anything, you would never do it. You have to have a little stupidity there and go, I can do this, and not know all those pitfalls and start running. And then when you hit them, go, God, I didn't know this, but I'm already here. Let's just finish. Let's get it done. Let's move on.
Yeah.
And you keep charging. But I would tell people, find what they love and then just start doing it. Don't be afraid of failure, because you're going to fail. That's a given. You're going to fail.
Yeah.
But if you do what you love and you start getting in that world, you're never going to dread getting up in the morning. You're never going to dread, oh, what is the boss going to tell me today? You're going to enjoy what you do. And that's really the first sign of being an entrepreneur, is being able to build something that you find joy in.
Yeah. And I just coming back around to ring-fence that a little bit, the software you've designed and produced is actually enable you to walk through that dream of going and helping other people. Is that just a byproduct realization, or was that a deliberate intent in the software creation?
It was very much a byproduct that I didn't expect. I didn't even know about it, honestly. I kind of stood back after I had trained about 5 or 6 companies on how to use the software. And I realized, I said, oh, wow, I'm full on consulting. I am actually doing what I love. And it was a byproduct, and I do love it. And I love it for the people. Going back to even my own statement, what I just said, being jaded. I am jaded a little bit right now when I go to companies to train them. Yeah. I see one of the pitfalls I've already stepped in, I've already fixed. Yeah. And I tell them about it, and they go, oh, no, that's fine. And they don't listen. And it gets me so frustrated, because I'm like, you are bleeding money here. I know it. You don't know it, but just listen to me and you can do better. And ego gets on the road, and they don't want to listen. And I walk away just going, that could have been so much more productive than it was, because we had an ego problem.
Yeah, 100%. I've seen that in the world a few times. You want to help someone with best of intentions. And my wife used to say, no one likes their third arm being pointed. Hey, so coming back to, just want to do a little sum up on some of your points here on what makes, I call it the leadership layer cake. It's all nice and rich and fruity. So in your leadership layer cake, we've got enabling and empowering people, having a vision and having visibility on your own vision, being courageous, not being didactic, being able to listen, humility, willingness to transform and help others. And one thing I really love is being open to enabling failure, which is so cool to hear, because as we've just discovered, you've got all these byproducts of failures that actually turn around and add value to your team or your organization. So with all that in mind, who do you see in the world today, apart from yourself, obviously, as an embodiment of those leadership traits?
I don't see one person having all of those traits. I really see each person having bits and pieces of each one, and just being able to capitalize on that. One of the things that when I get a new employee here at any other company is, I want them to trust their gut. I want them to take a step forward and go with what they think is right. And when they fail, I never show up and go, you screwed up. The first thing I do is ask, why did you make that decision?
Yep.
And then they're going to tell me, and then I know their train of thought, their process, how they got there. Now I can redirect them and say, that's a really good idea. But if you think of it from this angle, you're going to go in a different direction, and then you would have gotten to the right solution. I applaud you for taking a try, taking a step, but let's just look at it this way, and they're going to get to the right step every way. Yeah. But I always ask them, how did you get here? How did you get to the scenario that you're in, which we know was an error. We knew it was wrong. But knowing how they got there is way more beneficial to correcting the problem, just telling them, don't do this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Actually, it's what comes back to what you were saying about children being inspiring because they don't have filters. Adults have a lot of filters already built in or implemented, and children are still very, very natural in their outputs. And we can learn a lot from young people, but being able to draw down from different personality types and use it to create your own formula is not a bad way to go, if you ask me.
No, it's not. In one of the things that I've always found in society that I never understood in society is why are the things that we never talk about so taboo, what we have to deal with every single day. You hear a guy that makes really good money, he's never going to talk about money. He's never going to talk about money or how he got there and how he lost money to gain money and all of that stuff. He's never going to talk about it. Our society, the United States, I don't know about other societies, but most of them that I come across, money is so taboo and you don't talk about it. Because if you're doing better than somebody else, that's considered rude or arrogant, and you're putting them down by saying that I've done more than you. Then that does happen. Let's not lie. It's not 100% there, but I would feel the majority of the people want to learn from each other. They want to say, okay, I spent $50,000 on this magazine advertising and it got me nowhere. I see there's a complete lost leader there. I'm not going to do magazine. Maybe I should start doing podcasts like what we're doing now, or I should start doing infomercials or whatever your business is.
Yeah.
No one ever talks about money. They never say what they spent, what they gained, or even how they spend the money that they do personally. And I think in society, I think more people need to talk about money. It shouldn't be so taboo, so we can learn from each other. I mean, let's not lie. Everything that we do every single day is so we can get out of the 9-to-5 rut. Yeah. So we can go enjoy the sun, so we can go for a bike ride and not have to be dependent on the almighty dollar. Well, the only way we're going to do that is by investing and doing well in this economy. But if no one's teaching this or no one's talking about this, we're all going from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 by ourselves in the dark with no help, and yet we're all taking the same first step. And I find that crazy.
And the analogy I've got, the industry I love, or the sport I love, the sport of rugby is ridden with that behaviour. Everyone's working to the same goal, and yet the lack of collaboration across the industry to achieve a similar end is phenomenal, because everyone's holding on to their little piece of nothing and fighting over something that is yet to exist except in their mind, in a lot of their organisational setup. I hear you, man. I think with the money thing, there's so much perceived importance to material wealth. If we don't have it, or on a journey to get it, or we're struggling with it, then we don't want to deal with the stigmas attached to that, isn't there?
It is. It's really sad to see. And I had a conversation with some of my closer friends, and I actually broached a subject just recently in the last month or two that I've never breached before, which is money and investing and how are we saving for retirement. And some people looked at me and they said, well, we don't make as much money as you. I said, that doesn't matter. That makes no difference whatsoever. It's a percentage game. So I'm able to put $20 towards the stock market each week, and you put $10 towards the stock market. It's still percentages. What stocks are you picking? How are you making money? Are you picking loser stocks? Why are you picking those stocks? And I'll tell you why I'm picking my stocks. And I'm not going to lie. I suck at the stock market. I lose more money than I make money all the time, but I'm always picking these fantasy stocks, and that's my little game. But it's the percentages, and even if you only make $30,000 a year, you still percentage-wise can get to retirement at the same speed I can.
Yeah, it's incremental gains, isn't it? It's not looking at what happens in the moment. If you see an incremental gain over a period of time, then you just keep creeping forward.
Yeah, I mean, it says if you want to be, I'm going to make some numbers up here. I just read it a couple days ago. It says if you're able to put $200 aside a month, you'll be a millionaire at the age of 40. And everybody goes, God, that's a long time. But if you started when you were 20, you'll be a millionaire at 60. And that's when really the money comes into play, because you want to retire.
Yeah.
$200 is not that much money. You can figure that out. That's just a couple cups of coffee you don't buy. Maybe you don't buy the new iPhone. Yeah. Maybe you cut a little bit of expenses that you don't really need. They're more pleasures than expenses, and you'll be able to come with that money. Yeah. And so it's funny, but the more we were talking those terms, I think the more people would actually realize that it is a successful goal that's not out of reach.
Yeah, it's an achievable goal. Just got to trim a bit of fat. Okay, so we're coming close to the end of the show here, which I like to turn it around back on every guest and just dig into them a little bit more on their own personal pleasures, if you like. So over the years on my own journey, 2 things that I've fallen back on all the time, without exception. I look back over the last 25 years plus, reading and music. for me are absolutes in terms of balancing my life or restoring my own equilibrium. If you had one piece of music or one book you could go back to every time to help you maintain equilibrium, what would that be?
It would be a book, and it'd be Tools of Titans. That Tools of Titans book, I honestly, I'm not going to lie, I can only read about 12 pages, and it's added so much creativity to my brain of things that I can do that I had to put the book down. One time I screwed up and read about 80 pages at one time. I only remembered the last 10 pages. The other 70 pages were a waste of time. I actually had to go back and reread them. And I will literally pick that book up, think of all the new things based off of what he interviewed for that one person. And then I'll literally set the book down for a month, then pick it up, read 10 pages, and I got a month of creativity that I can add to my businesses. The Tools of Titans is almost a Bible of great ideas.
Going to have to go and have a look at that. And you've walked a phenomenal walk here. I've really enjoyed this actually. It's a phenomenal story, particularly over the last decade, bookended by the last Great Depression and the current COVID area. So well done you. So in order for you to keep walking your walk as a leader, what's the one luxury you're going to take with you on your journey forward?
The luxury moving forward is to keep my body in good shape so I can go outside and play the sports I want to play. That would be the luxury that I'm looking for. Years ago, even 2 years ago, I was out of shape. I was still doing the workaholic, but I was doing more personal time with the family and then working when I could, but my body was getting a toll. And even at 39 years of age, I couldn't change a lot of the things that was happening. I was just getting in the beer gut. I was losing muscle mass. During that time, testosterone starts to drop in the body. And I was like, okay, I need to wake up and take care of myself. And so I hired a personal trainer. And inside of a year, I'm able to push myself to the limits of motocross, of surfing, of going out and doing a really good golf game because I have the body back of where I needed to. So the one luxury is definitely keeping my body intact so I can go out there and play those games. One of the saddest things I ever see is if somebody's in their 60 or 70 and they go, oh, I used to surf. Oh, I used to play golf. I can't anymore. My body won't let me. Yeah. And I'm like, that is so sad because all you had to do was exercise it and it would have been just fine.
And as you say, and I think for modern executives or people in business, it is perceived a luxury and it can be let go of very, very quickly. But ultimately, it's an investment in ourselves and it's an investment in our organizations, isn't it?
Very much so. I mean, I went surfing yesterday. I surfed for about 2 hours. It was 3 to 4 foot. And I had a blast. I had an absolute blast. I only caught about 12 or 15 waves, somewhere around in there. It wasn't that many considering how long I was out in the water.
Yep.
But it was just so much fun and so refreshing. You get out and you just got a rejuvenation of a centering that you're not stressed out anymore. You're not dreading the next meeting or the next thing because you haven't got all your original thoughts out from the last meeting. It kind of is a recentering there, and it's definitely good for the soul.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. A fantastic story, and I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your time with us. And man, I hope to see you when you're 60 and hopefully out on your surfboard on the beach.
There we go. That is the goal.